So what we have this time is something a little more to the point, a little more hard hitting. The United States, according to reports, uh, has been accused of committing a war crime, and it from I mean we haven't had an official court hearing or anything like that, international court or whatever the process is, but from even what the U.S. is admitting, it looks like the United States has committed a war crime. Now that would be because we drone striked, or I'm not sure if it was a drone, but it was a part of a U.S. airstrikes in Afghanistan. And what ended up happening is that we ended up bombing a hospital that was housing Doctors Without Borders.
C-130 that dropped the munitions on this hospital. They knew, in fact, it was a hospital. There were doctors, nurses, patients, children inside. They deliberately wanted to blow it up.
I think that's for U.S. and coalition authorities to prove otherwise. We've done everything we could over the past years that this hospital has been operational. It says on the very front doors of the compound, we treat all victims of violence impartially, driven by medical ethics. We provided the GPS coordinates repeatedly to civilian and military leadership, both in Washington and Kabul. I find it very difficult to believe that people were not aware of the intent and the purpose of this facility. The fact that close to 400 patients have been treated during the preceding days, and then when the attack was unfolding, we called those same contacts that we had to notify them that the attack was going. And it continued repeatedly, basically in 15-minute increments, and hitting repeatedly our hospital and killing the 22 staff and patients we had. And there needs to be an accounting for that. It needs to be done independently. That can be complementary to the investigations unfolding under the auspices of the U.S. government and NATO and Afghan authorities, but we think and will continue to demand for an independent inquiry into this attack.
Is there any evidence, Jason, that the Taliban may have been launching fire from either from within that hospital or very near to that hospital that could have inspired this attack?
Our staff tell us on the ground, and note that we had close to 80 staff both on the ground working in the hospital, that it was quiet in the compound until the airstrike started. We cannot accept that armed forces enter our hospitals. That puts our staff at risk anywhere in the world, not just in Afghanistan, in Yemen, South Sudan. We need respect for our facilities. They're there to treat anyone who's wounded, but it requires, and it says on the front gates of our hospital, that you cannot enter with weapons. And we make this clear, and we've made this clear to the authorities at the outset of opening these hospitals.
It's always really interesting when people talk about Obama is not a war president. He supposedly ended this war in Afghanistan, but it's still, obviously people are still dying. And if people are considering it war crimes, why don't we call airstrikes a part of war? Just because we haven't officially called what we're doing a war, the actions that we are doing are still war-like. I mean, like technically, legally, yes, it's not a war, but the people on the ground, the people fighting, it might as well be a war. So what they say is U.S. Special Operation Forces, not their Afghan allies, called in the deadly airstrike on Doctors Without Borders Hospital in Kunduz. The U.S. commander has conceded. Shortly before, General John Campbell, the commander of the U.S. and NATO war in Afghanistan, testified to a Senate panel. The president of Doctors Without Borders, also known as some like French word, said the U.S. and Afghanistan had made an admission of a war crime. They go on to say their airstrike on the hospital is among the worst visible cases of civilian deaths caused by U.S. forces during the 14-year Afghanistan war that Barack Obama has declared all but over, as I mentioned before. And they go into detail about, how the people who were actually coming into this hospital were running away from the Taliban. So they ran away from the Taliban, and then they got bombed or airstruck by the United States. Like, how ironic is that? So the crazy part about all of this is that the United States has gone through like 4 different stories. They keep changing their stories, and the president of Doctors Without Borders says they are now back to talking about a mistake that lasted for more than an hour, talking about the strikes, despite the fact that the location of the hospital was well known to them, and that they were informed during the airstrike that it was a hospital being hit. All this confusion just underlines, once again, the crucial need for an independent investigation into how a major hospital full of patients and MSF staff could be repeatedly bombed. If this did happen, it's hard to say that it was an accident or a mistake. So, I mean, I kind of want to tie this in to wrap this up, but it makes me also think about, what was going on with the recent Israel versus Palestine. Israel was bombing from what they believed, according to their prime minister Netanyahu. They believed Hamas, which the UN considers a terrorist organization. They believed that Hamas was inside hospitals, using hospitals as human shields, as they called them. And so they used that to justify, Israel used that to justify why they bombed hospitals and killed people. So knowing that we are one of the biggest allies of Israel and the fact that this is happening, I'm not very surprised. However, I am surprised how quickly the United States will, confront what they did in this instance. But when it comes to Israel, they won't do that. And some of the stuff that they've done, you can argue, has been a lot worse than this instance. So I'm going to leave that there. Let me know what you guys think, and catch you guys next time.